happen to that person?
Yes, it is possible for people to graduate, and they don't have to become perfect to do it. Difference though, but you ought to be able to focus that intent, lose their objectivity. Effective in that might be drift around. So sometimes that's harder. On the other hand, sometimes emotion's harder, because if the emotion's something that you get your ego attached to, then that can get in the way too. That's why doctors don't operate on their children, on their wives, because they lose their objectivity and they can't function very well. And emotion can do that to you too. So there is a difference though. But you ought to be able to focus that intent in a sterile environment and be very strong with it, and actually be as strong with it as it is in an emotional environment. It just takes more practice. In the emotional environment, you ought to be able to be strong with that as long as you don't have your ego attached to it. Once your ego attached to it, and you do care about the outcome, then your objectivity's gone, and you're now wishing. You're not really focusing intent. Okay. Yeah, we've overlooked you for a while. You, Chris. Yeah.
If a person in RPMR greatly reduced their entropy to the point where they became more loving and very efficient, and it wouldn't be profitable for them to come back here anymore, is that possible for somebody to graduate from our system? And if it is, what would happen to that person?
Yes, it is possible for people to graduate, and they don't have to become perfect to do it. All they have to do is become in a situation where they can learn in some other system better. Okay? If you get to a point where some other system suits you better than this one, then that's the one for you. You tend to migrate to that. That being said, not coming back here doesn't necessarily mean that you've perfected again. It just means that you found another thing that's better for you. On the other side of that, coming back here doesn't mean that you're still flawed and you have a lot more to learn, although there's always something to learn here. But there are those entities that come here primarily just to help out and teach. And those are usually the ones that, like, again, we keep talking about the Dalai Lama just because he's somebody everybody knows who's very spiritual. So, he came here with a purpose. He didn't just come here, because he happened to be born and magic happened and he turned into the Dalai Lama. It was a very purposeful incarnation to take such a role. So it wasn't necessarily that he had so much to learn either, as it is he had so much to give. So it works both ways. First you learn, and the more you learn, the more your task also comes to be to give. So in the beginning, it's information you take in and you're growing, and it's like that. You get to a point where now it's information you take in and you're giving back. And that's just part of the process here. And that'll be part of the process in this lifetime as well as in other lifetimes. As you get to the point where you can give back, you do that. But you're not necessarily, everybody's at that point. A lot of people are just at the point where they're just still growing themselves. They're not to the point yet where they're teaching. So that's just a different aspect. So in a way, you don't really outgrow it. There's always more to do here. There's always something you can do here. But yes, this reality is not the only and not the best for everyone. And once you get to a point where this is kind of a hard scrabble, rough and tumble place compared to some realities, and you can get to a point where there's other things that are more meaningful in your evolution. So you can outgrow this elementary school and graduate, so to speak.
I have a question about